Welcome to Reels on the Rocks, the show where your hosts Whiskey and Sweet Tea discuss film from the unpretentious perspective. In honor of Thanksgiving, our topic is John Hughes' holiday classic, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. Please be advised, spoilers are ahead. Hey everybody, welcome back.
Happy Turkey Day.
Happy Turkey Day. Do turkeys squawk? Or what sound is it? Okay. Whatever that sound is, that's what I want to say. I almost said squawk. That's not the sound turkeys make.
No. Turkeys make goofy noises. Well,
I mean, they're goofy to look at too.
They're a very silly bird.
Benjamin Franklin wanted them to be our national symbol to the eagle.
I kind of agree with that, honestly. I feel like there's more turkeys in this country than there are bald eagles.
Well, bald eagles are endangered, and also turkeys are at least somewhat useful.
They're less mean than bald eagles too.
Really? Did you not see the Dawn of the Pack?
No, I have not.
Where a mob of vicious turkeys take over a town and peck people.
There's also Franken turkey. But that's a discussion for a whole different podcast.
Yeah, we're not going to discuss Franken turkey.
What are we discussing today?
So we're discussing the, Thanksgiving classic, or actually one of the few films I know that's like the Thanksgiving-led movie.
It's probably the one that everyone always goes to first.
Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. Classic film starring, I believe this was 1987. Thank you. That's right, because it was the year before my parents got married. And it stars Steve Martin and, the fabulous John Candy.
Rest in peace.
Gone too soon.
Seriously.
No, he just seems like a person he'd be cool to hang out with. But yeah, so this is, it's a movie about two guys who are who are basically from, completely different industries, completely different types of people, trying to get home for Thanksgiving, after, their flight is canceled.
And it was written by one of the greats, Mr. John Hughes.
Right. Who, because he made this movie, I can forgive him for making The Breakfast Club.
I came across a quote by John Hughes that I think you would actually really appreciate. We were actually just talking before recording, and you mentioned how much music plays a part in...
Oh my god. I'm sorry for making The Breakfast Club, because I would appreciate that.
The quote is, "The only reason I got into movies was because I have no music talent."
Which is weird because, his movies have, iconic songs in them.
Oh, all of them have excellent soundtracks, and after hearing that, I'm like, okay, he just wanted, he wanted a vessel to put all of his favorite music onto to put it out there. But that's interesting. Why don't, so in the same interview where I got that quote, he was talking about how The Breakfast Club was super divisive when it came out. It was pretty much 50-50, you loved it or you hated it. And I feel like we've talked about this before, but what did you not like about The Breakfast Club?
Well, I know earlier this month we had talked about Election. It's sort of the same thing. It's I didn't find...
It's just you didn't like any of the characters.
Well, it's I didn't find any of the characters interesting enough to really even, feel the need to relate to or want to be on their side. And then at the end, we have the weird rapist kid ends up with the chick that he, molests. And I'm like, really? So... Yeah, we got some problematic messages in there. It's not a movie that aged well, but I don't understand why everybody's just like, oh my god, this is the greatest thing ever.
Well,
even from a teenager standpoint, I never got into it.
Well, you know what he talked about in the interview is, so people were not upset about anything you just said. They just said that it was an attack on parents, that it was oh, parents are bad people, and he was also
being a teenager. Seriously, that's what people were saying.
Well, and he was also the people were oh, you think teenagers' problems are more they're bigger problems than nuclear war
to them, and they are.
Well, and exactly, but that's the thing that I think you said. Why was this movie so popular? It's because that was the mindset of the time: is you're a teenager, you're not important. So he made movies.
I mean, that's kind of still the mindset of the time.
Awesome. Well, I don't know. It depends on who. But the thing was, it was kind of the only person, making movies for teenagers. And I think that's what people gravitated towards. Because I'm not going to fight you on Breakfast Club, to be honest. It's not one of my favorites by him. But if you don't know who John Hughes is, he was prolific, and he wrote more than he did direct. I made a big-ass list of movies that he has written, if for some reason you haven't.
Kim Kardashian-sized list, if you will.
Pretty much. So, and again, he did not direct all of these, but these are just movies he wrote. So he wrote all of the National Lampoon's Vacation movies. He wrote Weird Science, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, which he did direct.
That's another one. I never got into that one.
He wrote Home Alone 1, 2, and 3. He wrote Pretty in Pink. He wrote The Breakfast Club, Uncle Buck.
I love Uncle Buck.
The Great Outdoors, She's Having a Baby, Mr. Mom, and
Mr. Mom's good.
Near the end of his career, he actually did 2 adaptations for Disney. He did the remake of Flubber, which was a remake of The Absent-Minded Professor, and he wrote the live-action remake of 101 Dalmatians.
Oh, okay.
So, and he also, near the end of his career, you could kind of argue that he wasn't as good as he used to be. He did some movies like Baby's Day Out.
My Baby's Day Out, that's a great movie.
Sure it is. Sure it is.
What? That was literally like a Tom and Jerry episode.
But this movie, as we said, it's like the only real like Thanksgiving movie. Kind of like I mean, there's other movies.
Well, you know what's even sad is because I was watching it on Tubi because it's available for free on there, and the poster they have for it makes it look like it's a Christmas movie.
Yeah, right. It's like
it's like a candy cane pole with the way signs pointing, planes, trains, automobiles.
I watched it on Amazon, but they're using the same poster.
And I'm like, did y'all even watch the movie?
So I bet so. This is interesting to me. It actually came out right before Thanksgiving, too, November 25th. So this was like right on time if you went to the movies with your family.
Was it 2 days before Thanksgiving?
Yeah, November 25th, 2 days before, because the 27th.
Oh my gosh, I love that.
And it did pretty well. It wasn't a huge success. The budget was $30 million and it made $49 million. So it was good, but not like. And again, it's kind of weird that it wasn't a bigger success because it's a movie I constantly hear about.
Well, it's
and in film school, it's another one that is constantly used as like an example for good screenwriting.
I think the big problem is Thanksgiving and Christmas, and people they go to the movies as a family.
Oh yeah,
and this movie was rated R.
And why don't we get into that? Because I always this movie.
To me, this movie is an unnecessary R. Do we really need to have? The only reason is because this one
It's the
scene,
F-bomb scene.
Yeah.
That's the reason why.
That's the entire reason why. And I'm like, because I actually never even knew that. This is the first time I've seen it in a long time. This is the first time I've seen it.
This is the first time I've seen the whole thing. I've seen several scenes in different classes. But growing up, it was one of my dad's favorites. And my mom was like, oh, it's rated R. You shouldn't show it. And my dad couldn't remember why it was rated R. So he was like, I guess I'd better not. Because for all he remembered, there was like some nudity or something. And it is, there's so many, another one to me that I don't think should be rated R is The Matrix, but there's like a whole bunch of movies where it's like, why? And this one, at least you can point to a scene and be like, it's the F-bomb scene. It's because they say...
Well, and also, I've seen this before, but I've always seen it like on TBS or as it used to. I think I haven't seen it so long, I think back then it was just called The Superstation at that time. But yeah, I don't remember, but they basically cut that entire sequence out. And so I didn't even know that sequence in there. Basically, it was him just upset that he got left there, and then he meets up with he walks back. So then it cuts directly, I think, to the taxi scene. So
for obvious reasons, we're not going to reenact the scene. And also, I've seen plenty of like clickbaity channels on YouTube and publications and whatever that have mentioned the scene, so you probably know what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. But it's just Steve Martin saying "fuck" like 50 times. And it is very funny. Actually, the punchline of that joke is the funniest thing to me. Where she's like...
I was trying to remember what but I know her voice from something else.
Well, she's the principal's assistant in Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
That's not where I know her from.
She does a lot of voice acting for cartoons.
I think she plays the orphanage person in Despicable Me.
It's possible. She does a lot of voice acting. And she's very funny. I like that woman quite a lot. I wish she was in movies. I guess she's a lot older now, but I don't know. Her voice is very...
Her voice is iconic.
Yeah. And speaking, like, in Ferris Bueller's Day Off, she was in that too, so I guess John Hughes liked her. Now I'm kind of wondering if she's in other stuff, because
just one thing, she's in every John Hughes movie, just at some point.
They were having an affair. Who knows? But yeah, it's such a shame, because it is a pretty... I feel like this movie would have been funnier to me if I had seen it in, like, you know, when I was, like, 13. Because a lot of it is... It's very classic comedy. Like, a lot of it is a lot of visual gags. There's some wordplay, hilariously, with the F word. And...
See, if I was making this and I was reading the script, I would have told John Hughes, rewrite this scene and take that
I disagree. I think it's a great scene.
See, I was watching the film and they said the same thing, and I'm like, but the thing is it's like...
The only reason I don't...
From a business perspective, it doesn't make sense.
I mean, film is art, though. You know, you should do it if it's artistically...
Well, that's true, but I'm saying...
And it's also, like, it's obviously a beloved scene because it's the only scene from this movie everyone constantly talks about. Again,
well, like I said, I'd never seen that scene until now. I didn't even know this was even in it.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting.
Because I'd always watch on TV and they just cut that entire scene out.
Yeah, I would disagree about cutting it out.
Well, because the whole thing is that he's been composed as something he's not composed anymore. You would have him flip out.
The MPAA is a flawed system anyway. Like, if you've never seen the film, this film is not yet rated. Check it out. It's pretty wacky the way that they decide what constitutes PG-13 versus R versus G anyway. Mm-hmm. So it can be very stupid, and there's plenty of movies where it's like, really, that's an R. Or that's even more so. There's films like Boys Don't Cry, which is an excellent Oscar-winning film that was NC-17, partly because of the subject matter. So it's one of those weird things. But I wish I had seen this all the way through as a younger person, because it's very funny in kind of a classic way. Because it's very much kind of like those screwball comedies from like the golden age of Hollywood, obviously with a little bit more edge because there's curse words, and technically I think there is actually a little bit of nudity with that cab driver early in the film. They get in and he's got like all the sexy women plastered all over his car.
But nothing that was so revealing.
No, not at all.
It was canceling out. That probably would have made it PG-13. That's probably it, if that.
Possibly. Again, the MPAA tends to actually give R ratings to more sexual movies, which is interesting.
It's the most sophistication of America, and the of America part is that they would rather you not see a sex scene, but see people get like ripped to shreds.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah, it's funny that way. Really, you know what's kind of an interesting take? I'm sure some people are going to be upset for me having is rewatching this. I actually thought Steve Martin kind of overacted a lot. I'm curious what you think, because rewatching it, I've always had like a weird love-hate relationship with his comedy, because I've never fully understood his. You know, you watch his stand-up and stuff, and it's very strange. I don't know if it's even by today's standards.
I don't know if I've seen his stand-up.
It's very... So, have you seen, like, The Jerk, that movie?
No.
So one of his, like, ongoing gags is, like... And it would be, like, his final joke. And they put it in The Jerk. It's, like, him leaving the venue, but he's just picking up stuff off of people's tables until he just has, like, a big bunch of stuff. Mm-hmm. And that's, like, funny to people. I don't know. I don't mean to hate on people's sense of humor. It's just very bizarre. Like, even that film, The Jerk, that might be something to touch on in a future episode. It's very weird. Because it's funny, but it's also odd. And I like Steve Martin. I think he's a cool dude. And sometimes he can be really funny, but I feel like this movie, he's overacting so much to the point of it, like, being kind of obnoxious. Like, there's bits, I think it's when he's left on the tarmac.
Kind of supposed to be obnoxious.
Oh, no. I don't have a problem with his character, him being a jerk. I'm thinking of, like, scenes where he's just really pushing his facial expressions and stuff like that. I think it's the bit where he gets left by the car rental company before the F-bomb scene. Uh-huh. But it's like he's supposed to be, like, angry at the bus, and he's just, like, shaking his fists and it's like a 10-second shot of him just making every... angry face he can. And I don't know. I'm just saying it because because I'm trying to be interesting, I guess. But it's something I
What's interesting about me about this is because I'm trying to think.
Because John Candy's really good. I honestly think he outshines Steve Martin in this movie.
John Candy outshines everybody in every movie.
True, but I just mean it's funny because Steve Martin's kind of a beloved comedic actor, and I feel like he overdid it in this movie. And I feel like
to me it was weird to watch this, not because not because I thought he overacted, but because I know I've seen Steve Martin in a ton of stuff, and I can't think of any off the top of my head, but he's usually a likable good guy, and it was at least the stuff that I've seen him in. And so for me watching, to me it was odd because he was playing such an obnoxious person in this movie.
It's funny you say that. Most of the roles I remember him in, he's actually a very mean-spirited, angry person, or he's like a bad. Another great comedy. This is probably my favorite movie he's in. Is Dirty Rotten Scoundrels.
Oh, you mean the non-remake of The Hustle?
Basically, but you've seen it though, right?
Probably, but I remember The Hustle better. But that's basically a shot-for-shot remake.
Oh, The Hustle's shot-for-shot
remake of Dirty Rotten Scoundrels. Yeah.
Wait, The Hustle came out recently, right? Uh-huh. I remember. Okay, I remember thinking.
I personally liked it.
You should watch the original. It's funny, and again, like it's one of those things I hate to like be that guy who's like being contrarian or something, but he's such an interesting character, like not his character in this film, just him as a comedian in the 80s. It's one of those weird things you look back on and you're like, wow, this was funny to people. But he was a very talented actor. Comedically, and and that's why I feel bad saying he's overacting, because a lot of his style was kind of just exaggerating a lot. But I feel like
I'm looking, because I pulled up his filmography and I'm like stuff like I would know him from. He was in the Father of the Bride series. He was also in Little Shop of Horrors. He
was the villain in Little Shop of Horrors.
Yeah, I know, but
that's what I'm talking about with me, at least. Like, I think of him as the dentist. I think
the Pink Panther. He was in the Three Amigos. And it's just all these characters. Like, I don't have none of them. I think.
I'm surprised you don't think the dentist is an evil. Like, he enjoys pulling people's teeth. Like, he in the song, he's like, I tortured animals as a kid.
No. No, but I'm just like, the majority of the films I've seen him in, he's always a good character. But Little Shop of Horrors is so over the top that if it looks weird, it's like you're kind of like, that's kind of the point. It's supposed to look weird.
And again, it's partly because I just remember him being, even recently I saw the Muppet movie and he was like a sarcastic waiter in that, so he was being mean to Kermit and Miss Piggy. So it's most of the movies I remember him in. He's kind of a jerk. Like the jerk.
Gee, I wonder why he was cast in that.
No need to talk too much about it. It was just something I kind of felt watching this, and I don't know. This film is almost kind of ruined for me because I've seen scenes from it so many times that most of the funniest bits are kind of there were some parts that genuinely made me laugh a lot though, like the bit where he's on the airplane and John Candy and the other guy are asleep on his shoulders.
I love that John Candy creepily wakes up and is like, "We're not landing at Chicago."
But that was funny. The whole bit with that guy in the pickup truck, that whole sequence was cracking. Just the guy they got to play him, his wife. Oh, don't worry, she's real strong. They have a dog just hiding under a bunch of hay in the back.
Right. I love, my favorite sequence I think in that is the highway scene. Because that's the one I remember. For the longest time, I remembered that scene, but I did no idea what the movie was called for the longest time. I was trying to remember what it was, and I was like, okay, do y'all remember? And I was trying to describe this scene to people, and a lot of people didn't know. My mom was like, oh, that's Planes, Trains, Automobiles. I'm like, you mean it's a real movie? I didn't just make this up.
That's
a classic scene.
It is a classic scene. It's one that I've seen in so many screenwriting classes because it's one that they talk about with setup and payoff, with diffusing tension, with calling back to previous. It's got so much going on in it, and it is really funny. And that's another scene that was ruined for me by watching it multiple times outside of the movie. But it is a very effectively written comedic sequence, all the way from hey, I'm putting my wallet in the glove compartment, don't let me forget, all the way to, you know, the the whole reason they get on the wrong side of the highway, to the whole you're driving on the wrong side of the highway, what are you saying? Oh, he must be drinking, to the near death, to the quick cut of them as like shrieking skeletons, which reminded me of Home Alone, which he also wrote, all the way to them stopping and it catching on fire, to the whole like kind of end punchline of his wallet still being in the glove compartment, all the way from before they were even on the wrong side of the highway.
Well, and then my favorite part of all that is, I don't know if it's in that same scene or if it's like when they're checking into the hotel. He's like, "Oh no, I gave you your diner's card back when you were asleep. I put it back in your wallet."
Yep. No, that's in the same scene, and then that's when he's like, "My wallet's in the glove compartment." But no, it's a super well written movie. This is another one we just talked about Election, but this is another one where I would argue it's a perfect movie if you're trying to learn how to write a screenplay. Mm-hmm. It's a very simple. It's actually like, if you don't count the credits, it actually clocks in under 90 minutes.
Oh, but you have that great post credit scene.
Yes.
Where he's still looking over those pictures.
It's not as good as Ferris Bueller's. Also, Ferris Bueller was good at keeping you sitting through the credits because of the whole scene with the principal getting on the bus with the kids and stuff.
That principal was creepy.
That was another visual gag that made me laugh that I hadn't seen before, was the guy, not deciding on the right advertisement.
And then he'd be like... and then puts glasses back on and looks again. That actually shows up a lot. I know you're not into like the ASMR scene, but that also shows up as ASMR scenes in movies. That sequence right there shows up a lot.
Really? Like just the
Yeah. Well, because exactly, and it's the sound of him moving the papers around, and then it's just him taking the sound of taking his glass, putting it off. It's there's a lot of slight noises in there, and I think there's a ticking clock in there too, and it's just like. It's a very ASMR-ish scene, but that shows up on compilations of ASMR in movies, if you didn't know.
I did not know that. I don't really watch ASMR, but I get why people do.
I love me some ASMR. I use it to fall asleep. I will press the because I have an issue with this phrase. I hate the phrase "well written." And just because
elaborate.
Well, it's because people will talk about, they're like, "Oh, you should see this." I'm like, "Oh," and they'll say, "Oh, it's because it's so well written." I'm like, "Okay, and tell me more. I need to know more." It's like I need something more than it's well written for me to think of it as a good movie.
Well, is it just because they don't elaborate, or do you have?
No, it's because they literally cannot give me another reason why I should see it. Like, this is a must watch. Why? It's well written. Okay, what else?
Well, the whole
it's like I'm a person. I'm really into I'm really into like the story. What the story is. Whether the story is told well or not, it's the story and the characters in the story is what really brings me in there, and whether or not but all anyone ever says nowadays, and I actually did a whole rant with somebody like 2 weeks ago over like those voicemail things you can send over Facebook Messenger, and I was like, can we please stop describing things as well written? Can we please just say, I like this because of an actual reason? Because well written is essentially basically become so overused that it means nothing anymore.
Well, this goes back to something we've talked about in the past, where it's using a blanket phrase to explain why you like something without having like a good example. And when I say something is well written, what I mean is that it fits.
When you say it carries more weight to me.
Well, the thing is, like, if I say it, what I mean is that it is it's telling the story well, but like again, when you go to it's not just screenwriting, it's like writing classes. Mm-hmm. They pretty much tell you the same thing. Like it's almost like a formula, mm-hmm. That you fit into, and you can stick to the formula pretty effectively. And sometimes you can even take a pretty mediocre story and make it better by sticking to that formula. I have a problem and this is where if I say it's well written, I basically mean it sticks to screenwriting 101 or writing 101 with novels and stuff. I don't think that necessarily makes for a good movie all the time, because I'm more interested in something that is like interesting or unique or does something differently. not to say that you shouldn't learn how to write effectively, because you should learn the rules before you break them. But I'm actually, this is kind of a cool topic, because this movie is hard to talk about for me, because there's not much I can say other than it's a very well written movie. And that's not even meant to be like an insult or anything. It's just hard for me to really, like, unless I just talk ad nauseum about like certain gags in the film or something, it's very hard for me to really say anything interesting other than this is a well-written movie.
Well, yeah, so it's just, I guess, like, my thing is, so the way I look at well-written for me is basically just like, congratulations, you've done the bare minimum
and that's
to be
true.
passable. That's why I hate it when people say you have to watch because it's well-written. I'm like, that's great, but that's literally the bare minimum as far as just telling a story.
I like that, because that's the thing. It's like, they say like a C plus is you have done everything on the checklist for the assignment. That is how you get a C. A B, you go a little bit above and beyond. An A plus, you could teach the subject. You have gone above and beyond. You've cited your sources. You have, like, it's just the best paper ever. And that's the thing. Like, I feel like a lot of movies that are quote unquote well written, it's like the gold star. Like, you did it. It's effectively telling this basic story.
That doesn't mean it's an interesting story.
Yeah,
it just means it's told well.
And I kind of, I guess I have to put this film in that category. And I don't want to be mean, because this is a really good movie. But it's hard to talk about, because it's like putting the pieces in place. You've got the two characters, you've got them meeting, you've got them clashing, you've got them reuniting, you've got them talking. It really fits the formula, and so it's hard to really have any nuance about what happens besides talking about specific scenes. That being said, this is also kind of what John Hughes does best, because a lot of his movies are well written, but I feel like the ones people remember the most are ones with kind of interesting setups or scenarios. Like, I'd say my favorite John Hughes movie is probably Ferris Bueller's Day Off, because it's a funny idea, like the kid who's faking being sick, but he's going and doing all this crazy stuff. Like, it's a simple concept, and just like this movie, it is very on the nose, like C plus writing, fitting all the categories and stuff. But I think what elevates that one for me is how bonkers it gets with the things that he's doing. He's pretending to be a rich person at a restaurant. He's going to a baseball game. He's pretending to be his girlfriend's father to get her out of school. It's like the comedy scenarios. Again, if we were talking about that movie, it'd be difficult to talk about it more than just speak, because I could be doing the same thing here, talking about, the funny cab driver. Or another visual gag I thought was funny was when Steve Martin opens the door and John Candy's there, and he gives him this woo face.
I know.
Like, it's just that face he makes cracked me up. But it's hard to talk
who
about.
Who walks around with $700? I'm like,
who walks around with a not suitcase, like a trunk with and that's another thing that actually, because I mentioned setup and payoff in that comedic scene, but that's another thing that is very effectively done and kind of heartwarming at the end with the reveal that John Candy's wife has been dead for a number of years.
I kind of figured that out early on in the movie.
Yeah, it's not...
If she had just left him, it would be creepy to have that picture carried around.
Yeah, I feel like if you haven't figured that out by the time he's talking to himself in the car, like...
Yeah.
I guess you weren't paying attention. So another... I hate being negative, but I will add that, like, the big heartwarming ending doesn't feel as earned, because I'm not even really sure what the relationship between Steve Martin and his family is, other than his kids really want to see him for Thanksgiving.
Well...
But his wife is always, like, making this face almost like I don't know, she looks almost like a mix between, like, upset and lonely or something, and I'm like, did he do something? Is there a reason he's coming back?
That kind of plays into something that I was like, I've learned to do in filmmaking. So we actually, if I remember correctly, because I saw this for the first time in recent years, not when I was a kid, and we watched it in queer cinema.
Ooh!
Because if you really look at this movie, there is a queer reading of this movie. Um, Essentially, you have, if you look at it, it's never expressive, but there is sort of this intimate bond that forms between them.
Oh, for sure. They share a bed.
They share a bed.
Come on. And John Candy kisses him.
And they snuggle. Well, and it's really kind of sort of, and especially if you look at the end, it can sort of serve as like a, unlikely romance slash coming out story almost. When you talk about the wife and how she looks the whole movie, like she's lonely, like he's been distant romantically or something, and then at the end, it's almost like, hey, it's almost like for to me it almost looked like he was bringing John Candy home to be like, okay, everybody, this is my boyfriend. Like, it's almost like he's like coming out at the end of the movie. Just the way that whole thing is shot, how very, sentimental it is.
I like this so much. Mostly, we've talked about this. Something that irritates me, and I think we talked about it in one of our more recent reviews, but I hate it when people take surface readings of films and make it so that they can't be about anything else. It's just about a guy going home for Thanksgiving. It's just, I think it might have been our Nightmare on Elm Street review, I forget, but it's whatever. Like, I hate it when people just take the main reading of a film and that's all it is. So I never picked up on that, but I like it because it at least kind of makes it a little more interesting.
Well, it's also, I was looking into this. I was trying to read about it. I'm like, okay, clearly, hopefully not. And like, I literally searched like queer reading Planes, Trains, Automobiles. Usually, if you look that up with any movie, there's usually at least something somewhere. There was nothing. No one else is. I'm like, but if you look at this is, it is very clearly can be read as like a romance or finding love. That whole situation, and an unlikely place with an unlikely person, and especially the fact that we don't really know that much about his family. We see them very briefly and just and then also when he's on the train and he's like, oh, I'm going home. He's thinking about his family, and then the first thing he thinks of is, oh, snuggling with John Candy. That was fun.
See, that reading's also satisfying to me, and again, it doesn't feel earned. Like the ending of this film is very like sentimental, happy feelingsy and stuff, and I'm sure it has that effect on a lot of people because everyone can relate to that whole seeing your like desperately trying to get home for a holiday, whether it's Thanksgiving or Christmas or whatever. Yeah, like it's a very relatable story, but I feel like, and maybe I'm just a cynical jerk.
You are.
I am, but like when it's all like, oh, daddy's home and everything, like I feel good, but I don't feel overwhelmingly like. And again, also it could be I've just seen too many movies, but it doesn't feel earned because I never see him talk to the kids. We barely know the wife's relationship. Like the thing that feels earned is when we discover the truth about John Candy's wife. And when he comes back for him. That feels like the emotional core of the movie.
I told you it's because he realized he's in love with John Candy.
And that's why I like that reading, because quite frankly, even though
that makes the ending more satisfying.
Even if they had like just ended with them leaving on the train together, it probably would have been a more satisfying movie. Even though it would have cut 10 minutes off and this film would have been like an hour and 10 minutes.
An hour and 10 minutes.
But it's funny because that probably would have even been better because at that point, why even have the family in it? Like, you spend more of the time with John Candy and it's more about them becoming friends.
It's basically that movie Carol before the movie Carol was a thing.
Have I seen... What's Carol?
That's with Kate Blanchett and somebody else, and they go on a road trip together, and then they develop a lesbian relationship along the way.
Sounds like a blast.
We watched that in queer cinema too.
I do love Kate Blanchett, so.
But yeah, we were assigned this in queer cinema, and so it's very interesting when you watch it, and I'm like, especially with the ending, because like the ending, if you don't look at it this way, it's kind of weird. It doesn't really make any sense.
Thank you. Thank you, queer cinema. You made sense of the ending. At least to me. I like that reading better than just... It makes it more interesting. Again, like this movie is very by the numbers, and that's a good thing and a bad thing at the same time. What do you think was the funniest scene in this movie?
Oh, clearly the highway scene.
That's a good one. I actually really liked the cab scene where he's racing Kevin Bacon at the beginning. I think and part of it is because of John Candy's face that I mentioned earlier, but there's a lot to it. There's the whole like visual like competition between Steve Martin and Kevin Bacon.
I love how John Candy's like when he finally meets him, he's like, "Oh, I wondered why it was so easy to get a cab."
Right, and I also love you see his stupid trunk before you see him.
Yeah,
because he trips and he's like, "What is this?" There's lots of like signifiers of like his character, like you see like parts of his clothes and his trunk, and you see like him getting in and stuff. But I just love that close up of his face. I think it even zooms in and just that ooh,
yeah,
like it's I don't know.
And then he's like, "Yeah, I thought you were trying to attack me," which I mean, low key, I could kind of, if you're not from New York, you kind of see that being kind of terrifying. You're at a stoplight and some guy just like the man. The worst part is like he goes through all of that and then he gets there and it's like, oh, okay, well it's canceled anyway. Or no, I think it's delayed at that point.
The highway scene's really funny though. I think if I hadn't gone to film school, that wouldn't have been ruined for me so thoroughly by watching it 20 times. Well, would you recommend this as a Thanksgiving movie?
Oh yeah, I would recommend this Thanksgiving. I would recommend this as a summer movie. I would recommend this all day long. I would recommend this be on the list for Pride Month.
Absolutely. I think, despite me...
Also, Steve Martin, John Candy, an adorable couple.
You shipping that?
I'm shipping Del and
Yas.
Steve Martin's character name.
Yas. Yeah, despite me being kind of contrarian, I guess, about this, I do recommend it.
I just think you're bitter they had to watch it so many times.
Ironically, I think that despite me knowing about it, and despite like movie people knowing about it, I think most probably young people these days have never heard of this movie.
Right. Okay,
so I
on TV
highly
all the time, and for some reason it stopped.
And I think that, like, if you know about this movie and you know like your kids or your friends or something haven't seen it, I'd say watch it because I think, especially going into it blind, it'll be a lot funnier than because again, this movie was essentially kind of ruined for me. Going into it because I had never seen it, but I'd seen all of the funniest scenes in like classes and things like that. So I do recommend it. If you have never seen this movie, I'm sorry for ruining everything.
Well, but to be fair, we do warn all our viewers that spoilers are ahead.
This is true. But I hope that even if you've sat through this whole review and been spoiled without having seen it, then maybe you check it out.
I feel like this film is so visual.
Yes.
That even if they've heard us talk about it, they can't really picture what's on the screen.
I agree. I also, I probably didn't ruin too much then. But if you're looking for something to watch with the fam, if you want to rewatch it with that new queer positive reading that T brought up, definitely check it out.
Is John Hughes still alive?
No, he died in 2009.
I would totally want to tweet him right now.
I think he'd be down for it. Honestly, I don't think he intended that, but I think he would be open to that reading. But do you think this is the best Thanksgiving movie of all time?
Well, considering I don't know any of any other Thanksgiving movies, I would say yes. Except for Dawn of the Peck.
And Franken-Turkey. Can't forget that.
That's not even a sitcom length episode. That's not real.
It's real.
Anyway.
It's real.
So what did y'all think of this? If you've ever seen this? As Whiskey said, what do you think of the queer reading? Do you think it's far-fetched? Can you see it?
Is this hashtag basic or hashtag queer AF?
And do you think this should be added to all Pride screenings? Let us know. Anyway, we will hope you have a happy Thanksgiving. We thank you for spending this time with us. We wish the best to you and your family this holiday season, and we will catch you in the next one.
Have an extra cup of gravy on us, guys.
Reels on the Rocks is a production of La Prince Laboratories. It is edited by Pat Mars and produced by Alejandro Castillo, with original artwork by Asa Sparza. Follow us on Twitter @ReelsOnTheRocks and tweet at us with any movies or topics you'd like us to discuss in the future.